Hi everyone, welcome to this video. I'm reading and annotating Romeo and Juliet for GCSE. This video will be following on and looking at Act 2, Scene 1. This will be in two parts and this is part 1. Okay, so last time we looked at Act 2, Scene 1 and we looked at the party atmosphere that Mercutio and Benvolio continue while they are looking for Romeo. Act 2, Scene 2 starts just after that, and again, if we look here at the stage direction, on very late Sunday night or early Monday morning. So we're still on the same day that we were on right at the beginning of the play in Act 1, Scene 1. This again adds to those ideas of pace and haste throughout the play as all the events unfold very quickly. This keeps the audience entertained and engaged. Monday morning, Capulet's orchard, Romeo advances. He jests at scars that never felt a wound. But soft, what light through yonder window breaks? It is the east and Juliet is the sun. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon. Here instantly we notice a lot of light imagery being used to describe Juliet. Romeo sees this window, this light through this window in the Capulet house, and he assumes that this light is being created by Juliet, as he sees her as this kind of source of light and source of hope, perhaps. The metaphor Juliet is the sun is a really key method for your GCSE, a really key quote. It's a really good metaphor because it's applicable to a range of different questions. And this idea of Juliet being the sun gives us connotations of hope and power and light and life. The sun gives life to the earth. Juliet perhaps gives life to Romeo. This use of light imagery also kind of seems in its intensity quite a religious image, because the repetition of all these light images, it does seem quite holy in a way. We can link this back to Act 1, Scene 5 when Romeo and Juliet meet for the first time, and it kind of complements and follows on from the religious imagery that we see there, two blushing pilgrims and holy shrine, etc. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon, who is already sick and pale with grief that thou her maid art far more fair than she. Be not her maid, since she is envious. Her vestal livery is but sick and green, and none but fools do wear it. Cast it off. Juliet then appears aloft as at a window. It's important that we know here that she does not know Romeo is in the orchard below the window. And Romeo is speaking to himself as he sees Juliet kind of appear in this window. It is my lady, he says. Oh, it is my love. Oh, that she knew she were. She speaks, yet she says nothing. What of that? Her eye discourses. I will answer it. I am too bold. 'Tis not to me she speaks. Two of the fairest stars in all the heaven, having some business, do entreat her eyes to twinkle in their spheres till they return. What if her eyes were there, they in her head? The brightness of her cheek would shame those stars, as daylight doth a lamp. Her eyes in heaven would through the airy region stream so bright that birds would sing and think it were not night. See how she leans her cheek upon her hand. Oh, that I were a glove upon that hand, that I might touch that cheek. Let's unpick this a little bit. So straight away we notice we've got the repetition of oh and the exclamation here, and towards the end of this section as well. This shows kind of Romeo's passion, that oh, it is my love, oh, that she knew she were, shows his kind of emotive and kind of deeply passionate state at the moment, and intensifies those ideas of his love for Juliet, or his feelings for Juliet anyway. And in between these signs of passion, we've got this moment where Romeo checks himself. He says that he's going to answer Juliet, and then he says, I am too bold, 'tis not to me she speaks. So he kind of checks himself. Perhaps he's quite nervous. Perhaps his young love is making him nervous of Juliet, which is quite a sweet idea and sweet image. Here though we've got multiple references to light and brightness in these stars. So we've got stars and twinkle and brightness and daylight doth a lamp and stream so bright. All these repetitions of light imagery again linking with what we said about Juliet is the sun on the previous page. But it also demonstrates that he admires her and thinks she's beautiful. This word twinkle in specifically suggests something that's delicate and beautiful. In addition to this, linking to further themes of the play, This idea of stars links in really closely with fate. Remember in the prologue when we saw the star-crossed lovers, here we see this idea coming through again. Is this perhaps kind of a suggestion and a link to the fact that Juliet is his destiny? All of this is destined to happen by the rules of fate. And perhaps Romeo has very little control over what happens between him and Juliet. Juliet, I, me. Romeo now speaks aside to the audience. We've got a little bit of audience interaction here. He's engaging us in his thought process. She speaks. Oh, speak again, bright angel, for thou art as glorious to this night, being over my head as is a winged messenger of heaven unto the white upturned wondering eyes of mortals that fall back to gaze on him, when he bestrides the lazy puffing clouds and sails upon the bosom of the air. So here we've got more different type of imagery being used to describe Juliet, and here we've got this heavenly imagery. So we've had the imagery of the sun and the light, we've had the imagery of the stars, and now we've got this kind of heavenly religious imagery, the winged messenger and the angel. So we've got these three different ways that Romeo refers to Juliet in this section of the play: the sun, the stars and the heavens. What we notice about this is that all of these things are unobtainable. You cannot reach the stars or the sun or the heavens. So this idea that Romeo constantly uses different examples to describe Juliet as something that he can't quite reach, something he can't quite have. And this is reflected in the staging as well. So if we move over to this page and have a look here at this example, we know that Juliet appears aloft as at a window. And this famous balcony scene when she comes out and speaks to Romeo shortly really clearly shows the divide and the gap between them. So the stage positioning also shows how Romeo perceives Juliet to be unobtainable. She is literally physically above him and he can't reach her. This also is representative of the physical barrier between them. This idea that the distance here is a physical way that they cannot be together, but also the barrier of their families as well and their households presents some sort of a challenge for them, as well as Romeo's more metaphorical boundaries of her being the suns, the stars and the heavens. So we see all this distance between them really prevalently in this scene. Juliet starts to speak. She's not speaking directly to Romeo here, but she's speaking about Romeo. And she famously says, "O Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? Deny thy father and refuse thy name, or if thou wilt not be but sworn my love, and I'll no longer be a Capulet." Firstly, importantly, wherefore here doesn't mean where, it means why. So what she's actually asking is, why are you Romeo? Why are you a Montague? And she's kind of like, oh, why do you have to be a Montague? Because she can clearly perceive that the name of their families is going to be a problem. It's going to be one of these barriers in their relationship. She then kind of suggests that she wants him to deny his father and refuse his name, to maybe reject his family and not be a Montague. Or, if he won't do that, be but sworn my love and I'll no longer be a Capulet. So perhaps she's suggesting here this idea that if they were married, she would become Juliet Montague, and therefore there would not be any barrier between their family names anymore, as she would no longer be a Capulet. Importantly though, Juliet is thinking of the practical things between them. She's thinking about the practical barriers, whereas Romeo is being much more poetic. He's seeing these kind of metaphorical suns, stars and heavens barriers between us. She's so obtainable and beautiful to him. But Juliet is more rational at this point in the play. She's more clear-headed. Romeo then speaks to the audience again, aside. Shall I hear more or shall I speak at this? This idea of him being uncertain and nervous here is quite indicative of this idea of him being a young man in love. Or, in an alternative interpretation, could this be kind of an invitation for audience interaction? Remember that when you are in an exam, you want to be giving multiple interpretations for things because it's more marks and it'll pull you higher up those grade boundaries if you can say more than one thing about a particular quotation. Remember as well that Act 2, Scene 2 is going to be a really, really long scene, and those uneducated groundlings in your Shakespearean audience are going to need to be entertained. So perhaps at this point Romeo calls for this audience interaction, in a kind of a shall I ask her, shall I say, or shall I wait, and getting them kind of involved there as well might be a bit of a crowd-pleasing entertainment. So this could be this kind of sweet, nervous moment, or we could interpret it here as maybe a comedic interlude as well. Juliet. 'Tis but thy name that is my enemy. Thou art thyself, though not a Montague. What's Montague? It is not nor hand nor foot nor arm nor face nor any other part belonging to a man. Oh, be some other name. What's in a name? That which we call a rose by any other word would smell as sweet. So Romeo would, were he not Romeo called, retain that dear perfection which he owes without that title. Romeo, doff thy name, and for thy name, which is no part of thee, take all myself. So here the questioning, what's in a name, what's Montague, shows perhaps Juliet's confusion and uncertainty at this point. She's not really sure how she should be feeling, and it all seems very complicated to her. We've then got this image of the rose, that which we call a rose by any other word would smell as sweet, meaning that if Romeo wasn't a Montague, he would still be as lovely. Just as if a rose was called something else, it would still be a sweet-smelling flower. The image of the rose here is used as to present love as something kind of delicate, something gentle. She doesn't see the family names as important here, is what she's saying. Romeo and Juliet don't really see the barriers that their parents do. Their parents' strife is not a barrier to them. Or they don't perceive it to be anyway. Romeo now speaks to her. So he can't kind of bear it any longer. He can't wait. He's hiding there in the darkness, and he has to speak to her. He's so kind of entranced by her. I take thee at thy word. Call me but love, and I'll be new baptized. Henceforth I never will be Romeo. What man art thou that thus bescreened in night so stumblest on my counsel? So Romeo speaks and Juliet can't quite see him. She doesn't quite know who it is. So she's saying, who is it? Remember, this phrase, bescreened at night, is a good kind of indication for a Shakespearean audience. They would have not had things like stage lighting like we do now. So this would give them a hint as to what the setting would be like. And we know that they want us to see it as dark and it's still night time. By a name I know not how to tell thee who I am. My name, dear saint, religious imagery again, is hateful to myself because it is an enemy to thee. Had I it written, I would tear the word. So Romeo's kind of saying that anything that she hates, anything that she detests, is something that he would get rid of. So he's basically saying, I will, not be a Montague if it pleases you. My ears have not yet drunk 100 words of thy tongue's uttering, yet I know the sound. Art thou not Romeo, and a Montague? Neither, fair maid, if either thee dislike. How camest thou hither, tell me, and wherefore? The orchard walls are high and hard to climb, and the place death, considering who thou art, if any kinsman find thee here. So Juliet here is asking these kind of rational questions. She's saying, how did you get here? Why are you here? These walls are far too hard to climb up, so how have you got in? And don't forget that if my family sees you, they'll kill you as well. She's being rational, she sees the risks, and perhaps the idea here that she sees Romeo is somewhat foolish at this point. Romeo, on the other hand, is poetic in his response. He does not have this same kind of rationality that Juliet has. And he responds, with love's light wings did I overperch these walls, for stony limits cannot hold love out. And what love can do that dares love attempt, therefore thy kinsmen are no stop to me. So he says here that love has enabled him to fly over the walls of the garden. And he talks about the power of love, and these stony limits, these walls can't hold love out. And he almost becomes love here, that he is love coming to Juliet. To kind of share in that romance there. There's also this love's like wings image of the lightness of Romeo, contrasts directly to when he describes himself as having a soul of lead in Act 1, Scene 4. In his love for Rosaline, he was weighed down and heavy. Now in his love for Juliet, he feels free and lighter, much more like the idea of love that Mercutio demonstrated for us earlier on. This is also some more kind of light imagery there that's adding to this over kind of running theme of things being bright and beautiful in his relationship with Juliet. Juliet responds, she's still rational. If they do see thee, they will murder thee. She reminds us and the audience and Romeo of the threats that overarch the whole play. Remember the prince and his threat in Act 1, Scene 1. That there's always this kind of threat of death overhanging the relationship between them. Alack, there lies more peril in thine eye than 20 of their swords. Look, thou but sweet, and I am proof against their enmity. I would not for the world they saw thee here. So Romeo saying that he's so in love, he feels that Juliet is the only one that can hurt him now. So he doesn't see the threat of Juliet's family killing him if they find him in the garden. He's besotted and entirely kind of entranced by Juliet. Romeo, I have night's cloak to hide me from their eyes, but thou love me, let them find me here. My life were better ended by their hate than death prorogued but wanting of thy love. So we've got this idea of Romeo being linked to dark imagery again. He's hiding in the dark, and all of this kind of links into the idea that this relationship is forbidden, it's taboo, it's secretive, it's happening under the dead of night, and kind of there was masks at the party to hide their identities, and now there's darkness in the garden. Is that relationship is very kind of underground. Juliet asked him, by whose direction foundst thou out this place? So, who told you we were here? And Romeo says, by love, that first did prompt me to inquire. He lent me counsel, and I lent him eyes. I am no pilot yet where thou was far, and that vast shore washed with the farthest sea, I should adventure for such merchandise. So Romeo personifies love here and says that it was love that guided him to Juliet. But this idea of him following love also links to these ideas of fate, that Romeo doesn't seem to be able to give a straight answer as to how he has ended up here. It was on love's light wings that he managed to climb over the wall, and he's hiding with her from night's cloak. He's not worried about the fact that he could be kind of in danger if he was found, and it was love that guided him to her. And these ideas of fate and events being out of their control are really prevalent here. Okay. That's the end of part 1. We'll look at the next section in the next video. Remember that if you need to go back and add any annotations, you can watch back through the video again. Also, please feel free to make sure that you're adding your own annotations to your copies of Romeo and Juliet. There is a lot more in here that we could go into, but let's try and make sure that we can pick out some of these things ourselves as well.